the daughter who refused to stay silent. The courtroom went quiet the moment Nipsey Hussle's daughter walked in, because everybody in that room knew this was not just another hearing. This was 6 years of pain, questions, whispers, and street rumors finally standing face to face with one of the most controversial names connected to Nipsey's world. Imani Asghedom was only a child when her father was taken from her outside the Marathon clothing store in South Los Angeles. Back then, the world saw the murals, the candlelight, the flowers, the packed memorial, the long funeral procession, and the city crying for a man who had become more than a rapper. But behind all that public grief was a little girl trying to understand why her father never came home. For years, the official story stayed the same. Eric Holder Jr. was arrested, convicted, and sentenced for Nipsey's murder. That was the legal record. But on the streets, in interviews, in comment sections, and inside hip-hop circles, people never stopped asking whether there was more to the story. Then Eugene Big U Henley was hit with serious federal charges, and the conversation exploded all over again. Prosecutors accused him of leading a criminal enterprise, while also laying out alleged intimidation, influence, and power across Los Angeles. And even though the federal case did not charge him with Nipsey's murder, the mention of old tensions between Big U and Nipsey brought every old question back to life. That is why Imani's confrontation felt so heavy. She was not just reacting to a headline. She was reacting to years of silence, years of unanswered questions, and years of watching grown adults speak around her father's name like the truth was too dangerous to say out loud. So when she reportedly looked toward Big U and made it clear she wanted him kept behind bars, the moment spread fast. Some people called it emotional, some called it reckless. But to many fans, it felt like a daughter finally saying what thousands of people had been thinking for years. And now the whole West Coast is watching. Before we go deeper, comment where you're watching from. If you believe Nipsey's story still has unanswered questions, press 1. If you think the official case already told the full truth, press 2. And make sure you subscribe, because this story is far from over. The legacy that became a burden. When people talk about Nipsey Hussle, they usually talk about the legend, the independent grind, the marathon mindset, the businesses on Crenshaw, the way he turned street pain into ownership, discipline, and inspiration. But for Imani, that legacy was never just a slogan printed on a hoodie. It was her father's name, her father's voice, and her father's absence following her everywhere. After Nipsey's death in 2019, his family moved quickly to protect what he left behind. His brother, Samuel, Black Sam, Asghedom, became one of the central figures guarding the estate, the businesses, and the public memory of Nipsey's mission. The family knew that Nipsey's name carried value, but they also knew it carried danger. Everybody wanted a piece of the legacy. Everybody wanted to speak for him. Everybody wanted to stand near the glow of a man who could no longer defend his own story. Imani and her younger half-brother Cross became the legal heirs to an estate that continued growing through royalties, business ventures, licensing, and the lasting power of Nipsey's brand. But inheritance does not erase grief. Money does not replace a father. And being connected to a powerful estate only made Imani's life more complicated. While other teenagers were trying to figure out school, friends, and growing up, she was growing up inside a public mystery. Every few months, another interview, another claim, another rumor, or another documentary clip would drag her father's death back into the spotlight. She had to watch strangers argue about the worst day of her life, like it was entertainment. That pressure built year after year. At first, the adults around her could protect her from the noise, but nobody can shield a child forever, especially when the internet keeps receipts. Old videos keep resurfacing, and federal prosecutors start mentioning names connected to her father's past. By the time Big U's legal situation became national hip-hop news, Imani was no longer the little girl people remembered from old family photos. She was older, more aware, and clearly carrying questions that had never been answered in a way her heart could accept. That is why her courtroom presence hit so hard. It was not only about anger, it was about a young woman stepping into the middle of a story that shaped her entire childhood and refusing to let powerful men, public images, or legal language erase what her family had lived through. Nipsey and Big U's complicated history. To understand why Big U's name still creates such a strong reaction in Nipsey's story, you have to go back before the tragedy, before the courtroom, and before the federal indictment. You have to go back to the years when Nipsey was still building his career, moving through the West Coast industry, and trying to turn local respect into national power. Big U was already known in Los Angeles as a major street figure, a gatekeeper, and later a community activist. To some people, he was an older OG who could open doors and provide protection. To others, he represented the kind of influence that could either help a young artist rise or make life difficult if the relationship went bad. According to the story that has circulated for years, Big U and Nipsey had a relationship that started with mentorship but eventually became tense. There were disputes, disagreements, and moments that people close to the situation described as serious. Some reports claim the tension involved business, equipment, respect, and control. And in hip-hop, those four things can turn a partnership cold fast. Nipsey was not the type of artist who moved like he belonged to anybody. That was part of what made him special. He wanted ownership. He wanted independence. He wanted to build something on his own terms. But independence can create friction when powerful people are used to being obeyed. At one point, Nipsey reportedly made music that Big U felt was aimed at him. Later, Big U himself spoke about the situation publicly, saying that things had gotten tense but were eventually settled. Still, even when men say they have moved on, the streets often remember the tension longer than the people involved admit. That history matters because years later, when Big U's name appeared in federal documents and alleged phone calls, fans immediately connected it back to those old issues. Prosecutors did not charge him in Nipsey's murder, but the public did not need a new charge to start asking old questions again. The reason this story refuses to die is simple. Nipsey was a symbol of independence, and Big U was seen by many as a symbol of old-school street power. When those two forces collided, people felt there was more beneath the surface than the public ever got to see. And now, with Big U facing a federal case, every old disagreement is being re-examined under a much brighter, much harsher light. The federal case that changed the conversation. For years, Big U's public image was complicated. Some people saw him as a respected Los Angeles figure who helped artists, worked in the community, and tried to redirect young people away from trouble. Others always believed there was another side to the story, a side built on fear, control, and reputation. Then federal prosecutors stepped in, and the conversation changed overnight. The government accused Eugene Henley of being connected to a broad criminal operation. The indictment described alleged activity involving intimidation, money, power, and a network of associates. Prosecutors used language that shocked people who had only known Big U from interviews, charity events, hip-hop documentaries, and celebrity connections. The most important thing to understand is this. The case against Big U is not a trial about Nipsey Hussle's murder. The federal government did not charge him with that crime. But the case still pulled Nipsey's name back into the public conversation because prosecutors referenced alleged tensions, statements, and Big U's own position inside the same Los Angeles world Nipsey came from. That created a dangerous emotional overlap. Legally, the government was building one case. Publicly, fans were hearing something else. They were hearing that a man long surrounded by rumors was now being accused of serious federal crimes. And when that man had a past connection to Nipsey, people immediately asked whether the old story was bigger than the official version. This is where the internet became gasoline on a fire. Clips resurfaced. Old interviews were replayed. People started breaking down body language, timelines, court filings, and every past statement Big U had ever made about Nipsey. Some creators treated it like a mystery. Some treated it like proof. Others warned that rumors can move faster than fact. But for Nipsey's family, this was not content. This was real life. Every new headline meant old wounds opening again. Every accusation meant Imani had to see her father's name attached to another storm. That is why her reaction in court felt like the emotional center of the whole case. She was not speaking as a lawyer. She was not speaking as an investigator. She was speaking as someone who lost her father and has spent years watching the adults, the streets, and the system argue over what really happened. The federal case may be about Big U's alleged enterprise, but in the court of public opinion, Nipsey's shadow is everywhere. The courtroom moment everybody is talking about. The reason Imani's courtroom moment spread so quickly is because it looked like something deeper than an outburst. It looked like grief finally finding a target. For 6 years, the world had watched Nipsey's family carry themselves with discipline. They protected his legacy. They kept building. They handled legal matters carefully. They avoided turning every rumor into a public fight. That restraint became part of the family's image. But restraint does not mean the pain disappears. Sometimes, it just waits. So when Imani reportedly confronted Big U, people saw a teenager who had been forced to grow up around unanswered questions. They saw a daughter who had heard the whispers. They saw someone who had watched old tensions between her father and powerful men become part of a much larger federal story. The image that circulated online was powerful. Imani focused, emotional, and direct. while Big U appeared calm, even dismissive. Whether people agreed with her words or not, the symbolism was impossible to ignore. A young woman connected to Nipsey's bloodline was standing in the same space as a man many fans had questioned for years. That is what made the moment feel bigger than the courtroom. It became a scene about generational pain, street politics, and the cost of silence. In hip-hop culture, people often talk about loyalty, respect, and realness. But when someone dies, those words become heavier. Who truly loved him? Who benefited from his absence? Who protected the truth? Who used the tragedy to polish their own image? Those are the questions fans kept asking after the confrontation. Still, it is important to separate emotion from the legal record. Big U has not been convicted in this federal case, and he has not been charged with Nipsey's murder. The only person convicted for that killing remains Eric Holder Jr. That fact matters. But it also does not erase the community's suspicion, because suspicion is not always built from court documents. Sometimes it is built from history, relationships, timing, and the feeling that the full story never made it into the official file. Imani's words did not prove anything in court, but they revealed something emotionally undeniable. Nipsey's daughter is still searching for peace, and the people who loved him are still searching for answers. The internet turns pain into a trial. Once the courtroom story hit social media, the internet did what the internet always does. It turned one emotional moment into 1,000 arguments. Some people praised Imani for her courage. They said she had every right to face someone connected to so many painful questions around her father's past. To them, her anger was not disrespectful. It was human. It was the voice of a daughter who had been forced to watch the world debate her father's death like a puzzle. Others were more cautious. They warned that public emotion can blur the line between suspicion and proof. They reminded people that federal cases are complex, that accusations are not convictions, and that Nipsey's murder already had a convicted defendant. They said the truth should be pursued carefully, not through viral clips and comment section justice. But even the cautious voices understood why the moment mattered. Big U's case had already shaken his public image. For years, he had been presented in certain spaces as a mentor, activist, and OG who understood both the streets and the music business. Now the government was painting a much darker picture, and once that picture appeared, people began questioning everything connected to him. The internet dug through old interviews where Big U talked about Nipsey. People reposted clips of him discussing their past disagreements. They analyzed the way he spoke, the way he smiled, the way he described their relationship. Every sentence became evidence in the public imagination, even when it was not evidence in court. That is the dangerous power of hip-hop media today. A legal case can take months or years, but public judgment can happen in one afternoon. A rumor can become a headline can become a belief, and a belief can become part of a person's legacy before a jury ever hears the facts. For Imani, that online storm is both support and pressure. Support, because millions of people still care about Nipsey and want justice for his family. Pressure, because every emotional move she makes becomes content for strangers. That is the cruel side of being the child of a legend. Your grief is never fully private. Even your search for answers becomes part of the show. Big U's image begins to collapse. Before the federal case, Big U lived in two different stories at the same time. In one story, he was a respected Los Angeles figure who had survived the streets, entered the music business, and used his influence to help younger people avoid the mistakes of the past. In another story, whispered for years by critics and rivals, he was a man whose power came from fear, pressure, and old street authority. The indictment forced those two stories into the same room. Once prosecutors accused him of running a criminal enterprise, the polished public image began to crack. People who once posed with him started getting quieter. Old supporters became careful with their words. Media outlets that had described him as a community leader now had to describe him as a federal defendant. That shift matters because reputation is everything in hip-hop. A man can spend decades building an image, but one federal case can make the world revisit every handshake, every interview, every business move, and every public statement. Suddenly, the same influence that once looked powerful starts looking suspicious. For Nipsey fans, the collapse of Big U's image felt personal. Nipsey represented ownership, vision, and transformation. He wanted to create businesses in his neighborhood, provide jobs, inspire discipline, and show young people that the marathon could lead somewhere better. If Big U was truly operating the way prosecutors alleged, then his story becomes the opposite side of that same Los Angeles coin. Power without peace, influence without trust, respect mixed with fear. That contrast is why the case hits so deeply. It is not just about one man's guilt or innocence. It is about what kind of leadership hip-hop celebrates. Is an OG respected because he protects people, or because people are afraid to challenge him? Is influence honorable when it builds the community, or dangerous when it controls the community? These are the questions hanging over Big U now. And while the court will decide the legal outcome, the public has already begun deciding the cultural one. For many people, the image of Big U as untouchable has been permanently damaged. Even if he fights the charges, even if his lawyers push back hard, the old aura is gone. Once a daughter of Nipsey Hussle points at you in open court, the culture does not forget. Why Nipsey's name still carries so much power. The reason this story still shakes people is because Nipsey Hussle was never just another rapper who became successful. He became a symbol of what could happen when someone refused to let their environment define their future. He talked about ownership when many artists were still chasing deals. He invested in his neighborhood when many celebrities were trying to leave theirs behind. He built the Marathon brand into something bigger than music. It became motivation, identity, and proof that discipline could turn pain into purpose. That is why his death felt different. Fans did not only mourn a catalog of songs, they mourned a blueprint. They mourned a man who seemed to be entering his most powerful chapter. He had Grammy recognition, business momentum, a strong family, and the respect of both the streets and the mainstream. To lose him at that point made the tragedy feel unfinished. For Imani, that unfinished feeling is not symbolic. It is personal. Every mural, every tribute song, every The Marathon Continues post is a reminder of what the world gained from her father and what she lost. The public gets inspiration. She lost a parent. That is why people reacted so strongly when she stepped forward emotionally. Fans recognize that Nipsey's legacy is not only protected by businesses and murals, it is also protected by his children. Imani and Cross are living reminders that the story did not end outside Marathon clothing. It continued inside custody hearings, estate decisions, public rumors, and now federal courtrooms. Nipsey's name also carries power because it forces people to confront uncomfortable truths about hip-hop. The same streets that shape great artists can also trap them. The same loyalty that protects someone can become pressure. The same people who call themselves mentors can sometimes become gatekeepers. And the same community that celebrates a hero can be left devastated when violence takes him away. That is why the Big U case feels connected to Nipsey even when the legal documents are careful. It touches the same world, the same culture, the same history of respect, fear, ambition, and betrayal. Nipsey's marathon continues because his mission still inspires people, but it also continues because the questions around his death still have not fully stopped running. The trial ahead and the question nobody can escape. As Big U's federal case moves forward, the courtroom will become the place where reputation, evidence, and history collide. Prosecutors will try to prove their version of who Eugene Henley really was behind the public image. His defense will try to challenge that picture, attack the government's claims, and remind the court that allegations are not the same as convictions. But outside the courtroom, the culture has already turned this into something bigger. For Nipsey's supporters, the case feels like a long-awaited crack in a wall that had been standing since 2019. They know Big U is not charged with Nipsey's murder. They know the official conviction belongs to Eric Holder Jr. But they also know that hip-hop history is full of stories where the official version never satisfied the streets. And when federal prosecutors start exposing alleged networks of intimidation and power, people naturally wonder how much those networks touch the lives of artists like Nipsey. That is the question nobody can escape. Was Nipsey's death truly the act of one man alone? Or was it connected to deeper tensions that the public has never fully understood? Legally, that question may never be answered in the way fans want. The federal trial may focus on other alleged crimes, other witnesses, other financial records, and other acts of intimidation. Nipsey's name may appear only as part of background history, not the center of the case. But emotionally, his presence will still fill the room, because every time Big U is mentioned, people remember the old disagreements. Every time prosecutors discuss power and fear, people remember the rumors. Every time Imani's courtroom confrontation is replayed, people remember that a daughter is still carrying pain the public only sees in fragments. The trial ahead could reshape Big U's future forever. It could also reshape how people understand his role in Los Angeles hip-hop history. But for Nipsey's family, no sentence, no headline, and no viral clip can bring back what was taken. That is the real weight of this story. A federal case can decide guilt. A jury can decide charges. A judge can decide prison time. But only truth can bring peace. And for Imani Asghedom, that truth still feels like it is somewhere just out of reach. The lesson behind the marathon. The deeper this story gets, the clearer one thing becomes. Nipsey Hussle's legacy was never only about music, money, or fame. It was about direction. It was about showing people that even if you come from a place where pressure, pain, and survival shape your life, you can still choose a bigger mission. That is why this moment feels so painful for so many fans. Because when Imani stood in that courtroom, people were not just seeing Nipsey's daughter. They were seeing the emotional cost of unfinished business. They were seeing what happens when a public tragedy becomes a private wound that never fully heals. For years, Nipsey's family has had to carry two responsibilities at once. They had to grieve him as a son, brother, father, and loved one, but they also had to protect him as a symbol. That is a heavy burden, because when the world loves someone, the world also feels entitled to their story. Everybody wants answers. Everybody wants a villain. Everybody wants the final chapter. But the people closest to the pain are the ones forced to live with the silence after the cameras leave. Big U's federal case may reveal more about power, influence, and alleged criminal activity in Los Angeles. It may damage reputations, expose hidden relationships, and force hip-hop to look honestly at the figures it has celebrated for years. But the biggest lesson is not just about one man. It is about the culture around him. Hip-hop has always respected strength, but strength without accountability becomes dangerous. The streets have always respected loyalty, but loyalty without truth becomes a prison. Communities have always looked up to OGs, but an OG is supposed to guide the next generation, not control it, intimidate it, or keep it trapped in the same cycles that destroyed so many families. Nipsey's vision was different. He wanted ownership, education, discipline, investment, peace, and progress. He was not perfect, but he was trying to evolve. That is why people still say the marathon continues, with so much emotion. Because the phrase means more than remembering him. It means continuing the work he believed in. And for Imani, the most important part of that marathon may be finding peace without letting the truth disappear. Her pain deserves respect. Her father's name deserves honesty. And the culture deserves a future where young artists do not have to choose between success and survival. So as this case moves forward, the world should be careful. Do not turn a daughter's grief into entertainment. Do not turn rumors into facts. Do not confuse internet theories with courtroom evidence. But also do not ignore the deeper questions that this story has forced back into the light. Because real justice is not only about punishment. It is about clarity. It is about accountability. It is about making sure the next generation does not inherit the same fear, silence, and violence that took so many legends too soon. Nipsey Hussle's life showed what transformation can look like. His death showed how fragile that transformation can be. And Imani's voice reminds everyone that behind every headline is a family still trying to breathe. If you believe Nipsey's legacy should be protected with truth, peace, and respect, press 1 in the comments. If you think the culture needs to stop glorifying dangerous power and start protecting its young artists, press 2. Tell us where you're watching from. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who still believes the marathon continues.